And here's some don'ts as well. And it's really important, don't talk too loudly or softly. It's important to match their volume, kind of that mirroring that we talked about. If they're talking loudly, sometimes you can pace them to a more quiet voice simply by starting out where they are and talking a little more quietly as you go along. Try it sometime, especially if you have a person that you know that talks very loudly. But in talking with one-to-one, sometimes people talk loudly because they're excited or upset, and sometimes that vocal pacing, that vocal nonverbal pacing is the same as the physical pacing. Verbal tracking and selective attention are important, and I'd like to go into these more as well, but I'm not really going to have the time. Following a person's story as it is told and through their own particular storytelling pattern is important when you're wanting to really attend to them. If you want to give selective attention, sometimes we can do that by paying attention to what's on topic and not paying as close attention or not paying attention at all or looking away when they're off topic to help them stay on topic. We can selectively attend to what we want, and that helps them to stay on topic more often. And that's a little more detailed than, to explain that I'd have to get into more detail. But keep in mind that if they're talking, attending to them, selective attention, really attending to what they're talking about and sharing with you is going to be really important. Don't change the subject to meet your personal agenda. Sometimes people will say something that hurts your feelings and you'll want to defend yourself. But if you're really wanting to hear what they say as a student, sometimes it's important to not try to meet your own agenda, but to stay with where they are and what they're doing. And again, that's verbal, but it's also nonverbal as well. And don't lose track of the story because you're distracted in any way. Body language. These are some things that I asked you to not do earlier at the top. Do face the other person. Do clear the space between you. Lean in slightly and use facial expressions. And don't sit back or be blocked or have a blank or appropriate expression. Even, and I can't do it because I don't have a chair, but if we're talking and we're closer together, well, that's a good idea. Thank you. Now maybe you can all see me, but I'll sit over here. So if we're talking and you're my student and you've got something to tell me, now I'm not saying lean forward like this. I'm just saying don't sit back in your chair. Lean up and lean forward to the person. Use eye contact. Be open. Keep your arms open toward the person. That tells you much differently than if I'm sitting like this and maybe even sitting like this. Doesn't it tell you I'm more interested in what you're doing as a student? So thank you for letting me use you as an example too. It's simple, and you probably know these things, and yet still sometimes just that openness of our arms can make a difference with some students. However, I also have to tell you that because of cultural differences, some students you don't want to lean into too much. You do want to. I had a man in counseling who would say to me, I'm scooting my chair back and please lean away from me because that makes me uncomfortable. And that's what I did because I knew, and he was a Western culture, but I knew that something about him personally, he needed some space. And so take into consideration individual differences as well. And nonverbal encouragers such as nodding or even a handshake or smiling, an open posture when a person walks in the room. One of the things I've noticed is if you have parents sitting down or students sitting down, even just sitting with them rather than standing over them can make a big difference. And warning, make sure you watch the cultural context. And not only culture, but things like generation and personality, as I just used that example of the man in counseling. His personality just said, don't lean too closely to me. So one last thing I want you to do, and that's switch roles. Now, the person that listened before, share your story, and the other person use some of those things that we just talked about and see how they feel. Just do that quickly if you would. All right, I'm going to stop you now. Excuse me, but I'm going to stop you now. A little harder to stop you this time because the conversation was flowing a little bit better. Did you notice? So, what was different this time for the listener? Now, if you were the speaker last time, you're the listener now, but what was different from your perspective about what happened in your communication this time? Yes, ma'am.
We were actually able to communicate further and actually have more of a discussion beyond just what was brought up.
Okay, so it kept the conversation going and it got deeper. Great, good. What else was different as the listener? Was that comfortable for you? Did it feel natural? Did you have to think about some things and maybe pay attention to what you were doing and keep the eye contact better or lean in a little bit? Mm-hmm. Sometimes that's natural and yet not fully natural. So you notice that instead of just being passive, you're a little bit more assertive. You're a little bit more active in listening. Listening is an active thing. So what about for the speaker? What was different for you than you picture might have been different for the other person the other time? Was it easier to talk? Yeah? Did you feel like talking? Did you feel like continuing on? Your nonverbal communication says that you're tired, and I can understand that because you've been sitting for 45 minutes. So let me say this to you. Please remember in nonverbal communication that it's important to observe, it's important to attend, and it's important to keep the cultural diversity of who you're talking with or who you're interacting with in mind. And again, it's not just really the cultural diversity, but the individual diversity and the individual characteristics. So that's all I have for you. Do you have any questions for me?